guys, I'm Amanda, the Botanical Brunette, and welcome to my channel. Okay, it's time to confess. I'm going to talk about 8 mistakes that I have made as a plant parent. So these plant mistakes are mistakes that I had made in the beginning, and I hate to admit it, but they were mistakes that some of them just recently got out of the habit of doing. A lot of these mistakes are very common. I have found that I am not the only one that does these, or at least did them. So, can't believe I'm doing this, but here is a confession. Here are my confessions. Anybody who has made these mistakes in the past, I am totally not calling you out on these because I'm just as guilty as you are. I was kind of misled. I was reading certain blogs and certain posts, but that's all part of being human, right? Is to make mistakes, right? Yeah, okay. I'll just keep telling myself that. But I just want to let all of you know that if you do this or you've done this, you are not in the wrong. We are all in this together. Before I get into all of that, please like and comment and share this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, really quick, I do have a blog that I wrote on this that I just released. I will link that below so you can check that out. And without further ado, let's get into it. Let's talk about our mistakes. The biggest mistake that I used to make, and I'm sure some of you will know exactly what I'm talking about, I did a video that I have been considering taking down. One of my very first repot with me, and I'm pretty sure it was my second ever video on this channel. Now mind you, I've only had this YouTube channel for a couple months, so this was a mistake that I had made for a while. Like, I learned from that mistake because I kind of saw the aftermath of the mistake that I made. And that is not having drainage holes. Now, for all of you who had watched my repot with me video, and I will shamefully link it up here, I repotted a plant in an old candle jar with rocks. Now, I have learned that that does not compensate for a drainage hole. What that does is it basically, if you overwater your plants like me, you will find that the water will just go into the rocks. And if you keep watering and watering, it doesn't have time to evaporate. I mean, there's soil on top that it's not going to evaporate very fast. You're gonna wind up having the same situation that you did with not having rocks. Now, there are people out there who swear by this method. There were blogs. I was like, I really have all these candle jars because I'm a candle freak. I love candles. And I have all these candle jars, and I'm like, why not, like, maybe plant a plant in that? That would be cool. Well, I found that it does work for a while, but the plants that I have root rotted, most of them that I've root rotted, were in pots that did not have drainage holes. So I kind of saw a pattern there. And a lot of the times the candle jars are in glass, so it's very, very hard to put drainage holes in that. Especially, like, some of them have like a really thick bottom, especially the one in that video that I shamefully recorded. I won't take it down because you guys can watch that and learn from my mistakes. Something that I've been doing that has helped me a lot is, I'm gonna show you my Linaris. It's in a candle jar. This is an old candle jar that I planted it in. If you look closely, I have it in a grower pot. This will help it drain. And yeah, you can just place that grower pot right in and it will, still drain through. A lot of the candle jars that I have are like 4 to 6 inch pots technically, so they fit nursery pots really well. I like to take them out and I water them and then put them back in the pot, or if they are far enough above the bottom of the planter, sometimes I'll just let the water kind of drain out and then I'll dump the excess water out. Sometimes the grower pots won't fit like exactly. So sometimes I'll cut like the lip off just so it sits like right on top. So I kind of finagle it a little bit just to get it like into the candle jar. But I had a situation where I planted one of my cactuses in a candle jar, so to speak, and I left it in there. It was in there for, I don't know, like 2 years, and it was starting to outgrow the pot, so I repotted it. As soon as I took it out of the pot, I just saw those rocks, big rocks, just like river rocks, just falling out of the root system. I wound up losing like 40% of the root system because I had to get all of those rocks out of the root system. But like I said, I mean, there are people out there who swear by this method. If you are extremely careful about watering and you can do it correctly where you don't have water pooling at the bottom, kudos to you. I wish that I could, but I used to do that, and that was one of the culprits of me root rotting my plants. So, and I'll tell you the other culprit of me rotting my plants because you'll know. So the next mistake that I used to make with being a first-time plant parent is I would use exclusive tap water on all of my plants, all of them. I use tap water on everyone. I knew it was good to water your plants with room temperature water. So I would, adjust the water and make sure it was like around the same temperature as the room. And I would go around and la-di-da, water all my plants. And once I started getting like a little bit more of like a delicate plant, like tropical plants or caletheas, I started to notice like them kind of like browning on the tips, and I was like, let me get a humidifier. Humidifier still didn't help that much. So I was like, what am I doing? I saw a lot of people saying that they buy like filtered water or distilled water for their caletheas. So I decided to try that, and they literally did a 360. So now I am currently pretty much watering everybody with at least filtered water. I have like a water filter in my refrigerator, and I just fill them up at night and then leave them to kind of get to room temperature. My caletheas, I do buy distilled water. It's like 99 cents at Whole Foods. So I am able to get like a big jug of distilled water that I only exclusively water my caletheas, my aeroids, and my ferns with. So those are the only like 3 plants that get watered with distilled. Everybody else gets filtered. If you don't have access to a filtration device, I have found that if you fill up like a jug or a container and leave it out for about 24 hours, not only does it get to room temperature, but it will also essentially evaporates any of the unwanted chemicals like chlorine out of the water, essentially making distilled water, and that way you can water your plants with that. So I have found that that works just as well. So if you don't have access to a filtration device, or you don't want to spend money on water because that seems ridiculous, I know, but you can always do that as well. So that has worked. Tap water is a mistake that I made in the beginning, but it's not a terrible mistake. You'll just kind of your plants may not like it. It's really that, but it's not the worst thing you could do for your plants. Okay guys, so the next mistake that I have made as a plant parent is the other reason why I root rotted a lot of my plants. I never thought that you needed to mix your soil. I would go to Home Depot or Lowe's or any of those places. I would buy a bag of potting soil. Didn't have to be indoor. I would just buy a bag of soil and plant my plants in it. That's it. Just plant them straight up from the bag in the pot. Done. Not every plant enjoys that, and I found that I have to actually customize a lot of my soils to the plant. So when you get a bag of potting soil, think of that as your base. So you'll want to add like perlite or bark or even like coco coir or moss to that, depending on what the plant needs. If the plant needs more moisture, you might want to add like coco coir or moss. And if your plant needs more of an airier, kind of a fast draining soil, you'll want to add like sand or perlite or bark to your soils as well. Like aeroids really like a chunkier soil, very fast draining. So I don't actually add a lot of potting soil to, like, for instance, my alocasia. It doesn't get a lot of soil. It gets more like bark and stuff. It's a mixture. I eventually do want to do a video on how to mix kind of like the basics of like certain mixes for certain plants. So stay tuned for that, because I will definitely do that at some point. So let's get into our number 4. And you guys already know this. It is a thing for me, is basically kind of like over and under watering your plants. I know this kind of seems like a broad topic, and some of these kind of feed into that one specific topic, but if you completely neglect your plants, I know people who are like, I don't think to water my plants. I water my plants like 6 times a year. I just don't want to deal with it. You may not want to get a plant that requires a lot of water or a lot of care. So doing your research is definitely important. And it also goes hand in hand with overwatering. If you have a cactus, you may not want to water that cactus every single week. You may want to just make sure that that cactus is pretty much completely dry. These are just, for instance, situations. I know for me in the beginning, I just loved my plants too much, and I just wanted to water them all the time and just walk around like all cute with my watering pail and just water them thoroughly every week. Your plants won't always need to be on a schedule. I do have some that typically do need it every week, but some plants that don't. So over and under watering is a big issue. My suggestion would be to just get a moisture meter and just check your moisture in your soils and just make sure that your plant doesn't need a drink, or it does need a drink and you need to make sure that you give it enough, but you want to just make sure that your plant doesn't need it before you give it to them. The next mistake that I used to make is kind of a mistake that people don't really talk a lot about. I feel like I don't see this a lot, but maybe it's just me, but for a long time, I never used fertilizer in my plants. And that's a big mistake. I thought when you have a plant that you want to add fertilizer to your plants only when they're not doing well, only when they're showing signs of decline. Now, yes, that is an option that you could do. Sometimes your plants may need more potassium or more, nitrogen or something like that. Sometimes your plants do kind of need some nutrients added to their soil, and fertilizing will do that, and they will perk up and be, prettier. But I didn't think I needed to do that often, only when the plant was kind of struggling. Once I learned the beauty of fertilization, I noticed a huge drastic change in all my plants. My plants became a lot brighter. They became a lot healthier. They became a lot shinier and prettier, and they started blooming. So that's a huge benefit. To fertilizing your plants. I also have a blog on fertilizing plants if you want to check that out. Again, it will all be linked on the bottom. But fertilizing your plants are going to be a big benefit, especially in the growing season. So the spring and summer, you'll want to fertilize your plants, and then in the fall and winter, maybe slow it down a little bit. Another mistake that I've made as a plant parent is not giving my plants enough light. When I was first starting out, so just to kind of paint you guys a picture, my kitchen is like in the middle of my house. So I don't get a lot of bright light in there. There is a little bit of like indirect light that I get from a north facing window, but I don't really get like all day sun. Putting a cactus in that area is not going to be a great solution. When I was first starting out in the plant world, that's what I collected, cacti and succulents. So, naturally I would put them in my kitchen. I would put them in places that they were not happy in, because cacti and succulents need sun for most of the day, at least 6 hours of full sun, most of them. So And at the time I didn't know about grow lights or I didn't know about any of that. So I was just like, yeah, let's stick it in the kitchen. And they wind up getting like leggy and long. A lot of the petals on some of my succulents started falling off. They were just getting like weak because they weren't getting the nutrients they usually get from the sun. They kind of lose their like really pretty appearance. They kind of become kind of like just kind of weird looking. So yeah, make sure you do your research and know like what that plant requires for light. In one of my videos, my February plant haul, I showed you my philodendron psyllium, and that I actually had to move to my bedroom, which is like a southeast facing window. I had to move it in that room because it was not getting enough light and it was struggling. It was starting to like, you know, even in the few weeks that I had it, it was starting to like decline really fast. Now it's in the bedroom and it's like living its best life. That's a mistake that I used to make that I am now starting to do more often, but I used to do it just because, you know, I thought it looked ugly. And that is wiping down your leaves. It is very important to wipe down your leaves. When you have a plant, you want to make sure that the leaves are wiped down because they collect like dust and dander and allergens in the air. So what happens is over time it builds up and then the plant can't absorb as enough light. So it winds up to kind of declining or growing a little bit slower. If you start to notice that, make sure you check the leaves. I try to wipe my plants down around once a month. I do it's like 1 part neem oil to 6 part water. And that neem oil just gets your plant super shiny and super like glowy. And it also just kind of helps almost like condition the leaves as well. So that's really good. And it's also a natural option for your plants. So make sure you're wiping your leaves down because your plants will 100% enjoy that. And it will, in return, produce some new growth that it may not have given you in a while. And the last mistake that I had made as a plant parent and that I will not make again, and all of these rules have bottled down to this one mistake, is research your plants. Make sure you research your plants. Go on Google, type in that plant. If you don't know what your plant is, there are so many apps out there that are plant identifiers. You can even reach out to some social media. There are so many plant moms and dads out there that they can be able to kind of narrow down like a plant. You can check out Botanical Brunette blogs. Those are also very good, useful resources. Or even the person at the nursery or plant shop that you're getting your plant from. They may not know exactly, but they might help you a little bit. They may not know exactly like what certain plants are, but they do know a little bit to an extent, or they might be able to get somebody that can help you. With all of those mistakes that I have made, that bottles down to that one mistake, is to just not research your plant. If you research your plant, you will kind of know how much light it needs, how much water it needs, if it needs a good fast draining soil or more of a dense soil. So you'll know what to do with those plants. I honestly wish I had a guide like this in the beginning to kind of avoid a lot of those mistakes, but I look at any of those mistakes as a learning experience. A lot of those mistakes I have made that I'm able to now share with you and let you guys know, you know, not to do them. Or if you do them, you learn from your mistakes just like I did. Some of these things I have no idea, but I don't know like why, but some of these mistakes I have kind of like in my research, some people are kind of coming out and they're saying like, oh, I do this and it's completely fine. So let me know in the comments if you do any of these mistakes, or if you're a culprit of one of these mistakes, but also if one of these mistakes are not mistakes and you actually do this with great success. I want to know that because I'm kind of interested to see like what people do. I know that, like I said before, like people swear by the rocks on the bottom of the planter. So I want to know like how that works for you guys. But that's it for today. I hope you guys have a great day, and